Okay. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining Bloom Network's inaugural hub launch event. This is the first of hopefully many micro conferences we're going to do around various topics that Bloom Network is very passionate and active about. Um, and yeah, we're the Bloom Network team is very excited to have you all here. We're thrilled at how many people have joined so far, and I see more people coming in every minute. You want to go to the next slide? To start, I guess I'll introduce myself. I'm Allegra. I'm a volunteer with Bloom for the last couple of years. I am on the creative leadership team with Bloom, and I'm an industrial designer. I'm a sustainability strategist and a startup co-founder, and I'm based in New York City, the traditional homeland of the Lenape people. And what I do for Bloom is creative strategy and sustainability strategy to kind of guide our organization as we move forward and develop new tools for you guys. So yeah, we're so excited, like I said, to have you all here. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. Each talk, because there are lightning talks, each talk is going to be a very brief 5 minutes or so, with about 5 minutes for Q&A after. So if you have questions for our speakers, we ask that you keep your mic off, and just put your questions in the chat. And then there will be time after the event for to unmute and have a larger discussion. We do have a breakout room if anybody wants to step out into the quote unquote lobby to have, a side discussion and then come back into the main room. Feel free to use that. And then we're already recording, so we're going to send this out after the event for anybody who has to jump early or, if you want to rewatch it. Next slide. I think we can kick it off with Magenta.
Hi, I'm Magenta, the CEO of Bloom. I'm our lead coder. I've been a local community organizer with Bloom since 2011, and I'm so happy that we made this hub and that you're all here to celebrate and learn about and collaborate around water and oceans. This is the Oceans and Water Hub is to some extent Allegra's brainchild. She works on an ocean startup and was like, "Do we have an ocean hub? Because we have local hubs." And she's like, "Well, if I'm interested in the topic, how can I connect with people around that in Bloom Network?" And for those of you who are new to Bloom, Bloom is a social network and peer-to-peer mobilization network for people who care about the places that they live. So it's all oriented around local coordination and coordination around the topics that we care about. So if you haven't yet visited the Ocean Hub on Bloom Network, definitely check it out. And you can join Bloom as a member so that you can connect with people after the call and ongoing. There are ways to share what you're working on, what you've learned, share from other people. There's a chat. I just finished a machine learning enhanced collaborator matching tool that's also on the website. So depending what you're focusing on and what your needs are, it'll help match you with collaborators who are in our network. And kind of the who is in Bloom Network is spread across local action doers and community organizers who are building things like local food forests, local economies, and caring for their local watersheds. People who are professionals who are volunteering their skill sets on these kinds of projects. And entrepreneurs are a lot of entrepreneurs are in our network with social enterprises that are caring for the planet and for people. And lastly, funders, philanthropists and investors. So, we have different tools in the site and a lot of social processes to help people connect with who they need to grow their business, grow their initiative, learn from one another, and accelerate the development of the kinds of initiatives that I would imagine most of you here are involved in. So the pathway to join is bloomnetwork.earth/join. Definitely check out the Ocean Hub. I'm going to pop the link in the chat after I stop talking here. And just so you can see like when you're exploring content in our feed, there are local media feeds and then there's like one global one. And then there's topic feeds inside each topic hub. So here you'll see all the water related content and you can surf and learn from what local communities all over the world are doing to map their watersheds, care for them, build economies around them, restore their watersheds where there are problems and imbalances, and even products like this mycelium surfboard, which I'm mildly obsessed with. So yeah, that's Bloom Network. So some context for you for starting our gathering today, and I'll pass it back to Allegra.
Great. Thanks, Magenta. It's really hard to summarize what Bloom is in one sentence, so great job giving the overview on that. I've been volunteering for a few years and still have questions from time to time. So for people are wondering how to either find a Bloom hub near them or start one if there isn't one. How can people get involved?
Yeah, the way you can find one to see if there is one near you yet. If you go to our website, in the top, there's a link called local chapters, or if you're on your phone, if you open up the menu, local chapters is kind of right at the top. And that will show you there's a map, but there's also kind of little cards that show everything, and they're organized by continent. So you can see if there's one near you. If there's not one near you, we try to make it super easy for you to start one. And, as simple as like hosting a meetup at a coffee house near you, like once a month, or a Skillshare, or film screening, or like if you want to do a hands-on project, or if you already have a project and just want to kind of federate with Bloom Network, so you have a larger global squad supporting and encouraging you and celebrating you. Yeah, if you go to the join pathway on Bloom, you'll see at the top, it just says join. Then you can, yeah, join as a general member as well if you don't have a local hub, but like you really want to be part of this community. Or you can join with a local chapter or start one. So it's all pretty clear. We have some good toolkits and guides for helping you get started there.
Great. Yeah, when we hope you will all take some time to check out Bloom Networks, everything that we offer after this call. Okay, next slide. We're gonna kick it over to Alpha Low, who's going to talk about restoring the rain. And then Magenta, if you want to go to the next slide and take it away, Alpha.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm calling in from Oregon. I used to live in the Bay Area, in California, and I remember I was back when Bloom was still Evolver, and we'd go to those meetings. And then we were having wildfires all the time in California, like every 2 years, and they were huge. And some of them, I got pretty close to. And I've been studying microscopic water, and then I saw some videos like about how you could actually restore the small water cycle, which is the whole water cycle where the trees transpire and then come back down. They add water to the air, and that actually increases the rain. And I was like, how come we're not and that also hydrates the ground. So how come we're not approaching California fires this way? We're just talking about fuel reduction, which means chopping down more carbon. And the more I looked into this water thing, I remember reading Charles Eisenstein's book, Climate, and he had a chapter in there saying water is just as, or if not more important than carbon in the whole climate, because it's circulating around the whole earth. And if we mess with that cycle, then it kind of throws off so many of life's processes, and we should really be restoring the water. And so I kind of like sensed that this was a really huge topic, and so I kind of pivoted from other work into studying water. And I was in the permaculture world, and we're doing some water restoration, and people kept talking about, well, you can restore the rain. And Bill Mollison, who founded permaculture, was saying that you could grow trees to restore the rain. And I came from a physics background. I was like, is this really scientific? And so the more I delved into it, and people were saying, well, the scientists don't really know what they're talking about. And but then the more I looked, there was more and more literature, and so I started on this with the scientists, and at the time I was also organizing the water talks and water networks, getting people to talk about water. And so someone introduced me, Judith Schwartz, who'd written this book about water in plain sight, which I see in the book. So she actually introduced me to this guy, Milan, who's a meteorologist in Spain, who was asked by the European Union why Spain was losing its water. And he discovered that it was because they were cutting down their forests and draining their wetlands. And so I got him to do a podcast with him, and that started my whole Climate Water Project podcast. And I already had this Climate Water Project newsletter on Substack. I put that link in the chat. And so I started interviewing other scientists. And, there's hundreds of scientists studying this. And, my latest post, there's hundreds of papers on this too. And so we need to bring all the scientists and all the people on the ground, the permaculturists, the water restorationists, to kind of work together, and then also bridge with the governance. And I actually have a lot of governments around the world now reading my blog and getting really interested in this. Major insurance companies, the investment banks, they're all now starting to look at this, because they're like, this is one of the biggest issues. And insurance, all the things fall apart if the basis of our water doesn't work. And like in California, we depend on the Colorado River, and 7 states are taking from it. It's not clear that it's going to last for 2 more decades. And we're draining all our groundwater around the world. So our whole basis of our human civilization is a little bit at stake. And there is this whole thing, we can restore the rain. And so we can actually gather people. And I started this project in Iberia, in Spain, and Portugal, to kind of get people together to look at ways you can restore the land. And if you can get these large bioregional movements to kind of restore the land, if you can restore 6 by 6 miles, that already begins to start bringing back some of the rain. And you could see that happening in Africa, where they have these huge, the Great Green Wall that's being built across Africa. So the idea is that what you want to do is start infiltrating the rain in your backyard, in your city, in your town. And the ways to do that is building rain gardens where there's divots, or so it kind of collects the rain, but there's soil on top. Or you could have hugelkultur, which is, logs in your garden that kind of soak up a lot more of the water. Because what happens is that a lot of the rain comes down on the land and then rushes out into the drains and flushes that back out to the ocean without being infiltrated in the soil. If you don't absorb all that water, then the trees don't have as much water to transpire to create rain. And also, we need to also replant. Once you restore the water, you also need to replant a lot of trees and ecosystems so that you can restore the rain. So anyway, so it's a key thing. We need to recharge our groundwater so we have enough water supply. You could do it with these methods. It'll help deal with wildfires all around the world, which are happening now, and help deal with our water supply around the world. Thanks. Any questions?
Thanks, Alpha. Yeah, for anyone wondering how to get involved in their maybe local political or other sort of protection rights, people who are in charge of determining, water use laws and things like that, do you have any advice for people of where to start, what to focus on, anything like that?
Well, water is surprisingly so many different demographics and sectors are actually working on what I'm surprised, So I didn't realize say California, every university has tons of water departments, and actually all around the world, it's such a key thing. So, and then there is also a lot of watershed councils, your local watershed council. And then there's a lot of permaculture groups doing earthworks, which kind of help restore the water cycle. And then, policy. There are people in California. There was this woman who just went constantly and badgered the city council, and because beavers can help restore our rivers and then help get a lot more rain infiltrating. So she actually, partly through her efforts, got California to bring back the beaver, and has a beaver department now. And so you can do work that way too, or connect with other people interested in water.
Yeah, that's a big one. Things like this, connect with other people interested in water. Thanks so much, Alpha. Yeah, Magenta called out the beaver department. I love that too. All right, Magenta, you want to flip?
Oh, someone asked about Tamara. Do you want me to answer questions in the chat? Yeah.
I think we can hold that for afterwards so we can
Okay.
keep. Oh no, we've got a few minutes. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I know about the Tamara project. Actually, I wanted to go to Tamara. Yeah, they have this cool Sepp Holzer. He looked at the water because Portugal does in that area it has less rain, and so they capture the water in these water ponds, and now they're actually able to supply. They recharge the whole water in their watershed, and they're able to supply a lot of water to them. And Sepp Holzer, who worked on this project, and now has a student, Zach Weiss. And Zach Weiss started doing all these projects, and Sepp said to Zach, we need to train 100,000 of you. So he launched this project called Water Stories, which now trains a lot of people around the world to do this work in your area. So yeah, if you want to look up that too, Water Stories. And also, they have various courses you can sign up online to learn about this.
Sorry, if I may, I'm sorry, it was me who asked the question because you were saying that you never visit there, Tamara?
No.
Okay, because I went there a few years ago, because I'm from Portugal, and they were in between before the summer, and they were not very active. And I was wondering if you would been there, if you knew if they reactivate more and everything, because I've seen from the social media and everything, they have much more activity now.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
It seemed a really cool project. They have they have really good things over there going on.
Mm-mm.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Great, thanks.
I remember when I was in Portugal, I was like on one of the hillsides in the southern part and just watching, I could see the clouds moving from like, kilometers away. And then when it hit the trees, the places that had trees would actually rain because the trees like kind of would see the rain, but places didn't have the trees, they weren't raining. So I could actually see the very act of the trees creating the rain. So if you want to get in touch, I'm also on LinkedIn. I'll put that, and I have an Instagram, Climate Water Project, and yeah.
Yeah, great. And if you guys want to continue the discussion, either at the end of this call, we'll have some time, or yeah, feel free to connect with any and all of our speakers on LinkedIn or however else you want to reach them. Keep the conversation going. Or in the Bloom Ocean Hub, we'll also be over there. Okay. So up next, we have Meg Rivers presenting or speaking about the primordial dream. Take it away, Meg. And just ask Magenta to advance the slides as you need.
All right, so let's have the first slide. Thank you so much. I don't see that slide. There we go. All right, so my name's Meg Rivers, and I'm an author, and this talk is about my first book, The Primordial Dream, which is still in process, and yep, there we go. Need that slide up there. This book is still in process. I have written 13 chapters. I have been writing it for 17 years, so it is a large body of research. So in college, I started out pre-med and realized pretty quickly, I took a lot of biology, I took a lot of chemistry, realized pretty quickly that that was not the right career path for me. And so in college, I ended up getting an anthropology degree. And I'd never even heard the word anthropology before I started out in that degree. I just saw it being offered as a major, and I chose that. So I really loved it. I paid a lot of attention, ended up getting a 3.9 GPA in my major in the year 2000. So I just want to start this talk by saying that I am formally educated in this topic. So soon after I graduated, I discovered something in my field, but I realized that it wasn't going to be easy to explain and it wasn't going to be quick to resolve. So I spent about the first year of those 17 strategizing, like what to do with it, writing about it, reaching out, trying to find other people who this kind of awakening discoveries were happening to. And so in 2009, that's actually what led me to Bloom that same year. And so I came to realize that what was expressing through my consciousness was part of a greater movement. And although I didn't know what to call it at the time, that movement already had a name that I can't more clearly define than regenerative culture. So, a lot of those people in the early days of regenerative culture were really into plant medicine and just sort of in a sense of psychedelic inquiry. And that focus was a part of this work somewhere. But across the contingent that was becoming Bloom, there was something more uplifting and deeper, like greater than the voyaging and seeking that people sort of started out with plant medicines. So, and I feel like at the end of those journeys, there was the finding and the doing. So this talk is about action, right? And I feel like the spirit of regenerative culture was really rising up out of these nation states that we've all been organized into, already embodied in indigenous cultures, connections with plants, the natural world, and other animals that we would have had if it hadn't been trampled and really demeaned by colonial empires. And so, through a series of unlikely events, I came to understand that there was some message I have to the future around how our bodies came together and evolved in the early ocean. And the animal that kept coming to me in my life to research at first was the land slug. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, not a lot of oceans for me to check out, but there's a lot of slugs. If you're from the Midwest, you know that there's a wide variety for you to look at. So I got really interested in the land slug as a kid, knew a lot about it. Got really interested in sea slugs, nudibranchs, which has been a topic we've explored here at Bloom. And the more I researched about them, the more obsessed about their rather glorious beauty I became. And also, just it feels like there's something more about them than we understand, right? Something that you can't put into words. So, slugs can regenerate. And as it turns out, they serve almost exactly the same functions in their environment that our livers serve in our body. And I became really intrigued by these connections. And when I realized it, began to explore more fully. I'm greatly minimizing the story here for time's sake. But for example, sea hares, which is a type of sea slug, have an extra toxin gland that operates a lot like our gallbladder, looks like our gallbladder, has this gross ink that floats in water like bile. The land slug's hole or pneumostome has always reminded me of the place where the hepatic vein comes into the liver. So I started to think about this. This is an early painting of mine that was just about the idea of where did our human spirit come from, right? Like it starting to form in the ocean. You see the golden hearts there. That's actually a tunicate, which is an early chordate, which is what they believe is our earliest ancestor. So that was growing in the ocean, and my idea that started to form was our spirit sort of forming in the water then. So I started to really explore this as an artist in the next slide, and I realized that every organ had an animal that was really similar to it. Evolved quite a bit now, but this is Marty. I started working with these deep archetypes of Adam and Eve called Linda and Martine. This is Marty's shallow mind. On the next slide, we're going to see Marty's kind heart. And these are sea animals that are compiled here. So Marty's kind heart, just a prototype here. In the next slide, we see Marty's depth. And then you can kind of move on to, in the sake of time, go ahead and move on to the next one, please. And then on the next one, you can see them. Well, there was one before that, I thought, but maybe not. All right. So basically, oh, there we go. There they all are all together. So this is my sort of idea of putting all of these animals that really resemble our organs together in the shape of our being. So it's the idea of sort of as inside, as above, so below, right? Like how we're made in the ocean's image. And in the next slide, which I don't have much time to talk about, but that's all right. On the next slide basically what I've come to realize in the primordial is that there is one of our organs and functionalities inside of our bodies. So the function that these animals serve in their environment is the function that our similar marine cognate organ serves inside our body. And so I've had to give them names so that I am able to talk about them in a way that makes sense. But basically, this is where my book started out 17 years ago. So if you can imagine where it's arrived at now, basically, there are seven animals that can account for all 78 organs inside our body. And my hope is that in really learning these deeper connections between these animals and our organs, that we can promote a self-interest in ocean research where people realize that our medicines and the keys to understanding our bodies are in the ocean. So if you just move to the next slide, I will finish there. There's so much more I could talk about, but in the next slide is the same slide that I started out with the first slide, but these are them. These are the animals that I'm looking at. If you could go back to that slide, please. Those are the animals that I'm looking at in terms of being potentially homologous to our organ systems. And yeah, so I guess we can move into a Q&A. I made that as short as I could.
Thanks, Meg. I know there's a lot of research and background information that goes into your topic. So appreciate you distilling that down. And yeah, happy to chat more, of course, if you're able to stay on at the end of the call.
Sure.
So a question for you is, do you see, or I guess how do you see our bodies as microcosms for how the ocean functions as a system? Is that something that you see a
Yeah,
parallel?
absolutely. And in the book, I asked the question, what role do our organs play in the ocean of our body? And then also the greater question, what role do we play in the ocean of our lives? Certainly.
Perfect. Succinct answer. I had a feeling that was going to be a yes from you on that one. Thanks. Yeah, I think we're right on time, so we can keep it moving. And up next, we have Daniel Kleinman with Diving into BlueTech. Is he on the call? I know he had some
I'm
time
here. Hey,
constraints.
everybody.
You're here. Great. Perfect.
Yes. And I see some familiar faces in the audience. Shout out to Manuel Makeda as well. But yeah, great to be here, and really just love to support fellow community builders and ecosystem builders. So glad to be able to support. So I'm Daniel. I'm the founder and CEO of Seaworthy Collective. We're a nonprofit based here in Miami that supports current and aspiring entrepreneurs developing solutions for ocean impact. And as you can see on the slide, we really embrace this bottom-up approach of not only building community and raising awareness, but leading people to the tangible opportunity to develop solutions so that we can build an ecosystem for ocean innovation, both regionally and globally. And we do that a couple different ways. If you can click for me, sorry, you're gonna do a lot of clicking here, like I said. But so the first piece, as raising awareness, is how we educate people on what the ocean economy is or blue economy is. We have our Sea Change Maker series, which is panels featuring our founders, and a fellowship program as well to help people get experiential learning on developing ocean innovation startups. And then our flagship event is our startup showcase week coming up next month. But then you can click again. Our flagship program is our Startup Student Incubator, where we support both current founders who already have their ideas, as well as aspiring entrepreneurs who we co-create around them based on their skill sets to develop new startups. You can go to the next slide. So to date, we've now supported 111 entrepreneurs over the last 5.5 years. We're currently in the middle of our seventh cohort, 57 startups who've raised over $34 million to date. But what we're most proud of is actually the fact that when we first started, there wasn't really an ecosystem for doing this kind of work here in South Florida, despite the obvious opportunity of being surrounded by water. And we've seen over a 10x growth in local, regionally based startups. You can go to the next slide. So now to talk about some lessons learned that are in our experience, but we see kind of being very emblematic of the broader sector as a whole right now. So back at the beginning of last year, we won a $14 million grant with NOAA for our partnership called the Continuum, which is supporting ocean enterprise or ocean data startups. But as you all know, last year was certainly not a very stable year for those of us who are federally funded. So if you can click again real quick, this is where I bring some comedy in. So just when you think you have it all figured out, there's truly no very very little such thing as full stability. And so as you all know, if you want to click one more time, there was obviously the grant freeze, but more importantly, it forced us to take a step back and reevaluate a lot of our strategy, as many of us did last year to pivot. And so basically, things have gotten a little more stable in this year, at least the months that followed. Really, I'd love to just share some of our lessons learned that went back to even our earliest strategy. I took this from, we have an event here called F Up Nights here in Miami, and I know they have events otherwise or elsewhere that basically were some of our screw ups that hopefully you can learn from and that many of our founders have learned from. So first and foremost is business model. For anyone else here that runs a nonprofit, traditionally we all depend pretty much on one source of revenue. For us, it was primarily the government as a federally funded organization, and we won 5 federal grants over the last few years. But then on the flip side, when it came to strategy, we really had all of our eggs in one basket last year, with NOAA being our really only funder for 2025, other than one other small grant that we won. And so, all that to say, it was both diversifying our revenue streams and knowing that even though we typically have gotten customers or partners that were few but deep commitments, we knew we had to come up with other ways to actually start to get revenue, and more importantly, keep the lights on through a very uncertain time, as federal funding was up in the air last year. And then last and most importantly, there's a lot of idealism, I think, in a lot of the work we all do. As an engineer, personally, my idealism was not having patience for politics and policy. And I came face to face with that last year because we did not have a choice, and ended up going on Capitol Hill for the first time and actually meeting with staffers and lawmakers who can help actually, on both sides of the aisle, believe it or not, support the work we do and understand the value of building Florida and US's ocean economy. So you can go to this final slide. Basically, a couple of learnings just to share, which again, really, I think is just for many folks who are either maybe earlier on and hopefully can get ahead of some of these mistakes, or just understand some of the realities, at least, of building. What I like to call imposter stability is a real thing, where you can never take for granted what you have today might be gone tomorrow. So always building for resilience. If there are any funders in the room, I love to say that patient capital, aka unrestricted capital in the nonprofit space, is really, really critical, because if everything is scoped for grants, then that means there's nothing held in reserves for founders or for startups and nonprofits to be able to continue on in case things don't go the way we plan. We also faced a lot of hard decisions last year. I don't have time to get into all of them, but just to say that it's really important to understand what aligns with your values and what doesn't. And then also, how you can leverage what we call the 8 forms of capital. If anyone's deep into the regenerative space, things outside of financial capital that can really help you, especially on the social capital front, like board members, partners, and networks like this. And then most importantly, just as I mentioned, getting on Capitol Hill, being able to embrace these opportunities, get out of your comfort zone. One of the best things about entrepreneurship is that, just like academia isn't the only form of lifelong learning, and so it's really, really important to do that. So that's a quick dive into what our last year or so has been like. But more importantly, when we talk about building for the future of our oceans and the blue economy, this is what we love to preach at Seaworthy is that there's a lot of preconceived notions when it comes to the blue economy and getting involved in ocean innovation. And the reality is that you don't have to have a marine science degree or PhD to do this work. And so if you're looking to dive in and get into BlueTech, we support those who already may have early stage ideas or don't even have the idea and are just looking to get involved and maybe even go create a startup. So we have our info here and happy to answer any questions you all have on what it means to get in the space. And thanks for being here too tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Yeah, it's great to hear about, how, or not great, but helpful, I think, to hear about how common some of these challenges are for everyone, both, startups and, fully formed companies. So learning from each other, I think, is a big part of that. So to that point, we have a question about which you already sort of spoke to. So I don't know if you want to maybe elaborate on this for 1 or 2 more minutes, but how to diversify revenue and build in resilience from the start so that companies aren't reliant on one source of revenue, especially if it's maybe the US government or another government that suddenly decides to shift funding elsewhere. Any advice on that topic?
Yeah, a couple points. So, especially for startups here or aspiring founders, we say market validation is most important, right? So, which is arguably the hardest work that no one wants to do. But what that means is actually making sure that what you're building, people want to buy, which means talking to the people you're designing your product or your solution or service for, and understanding not only what the value is to them, but what does it actually look like financially for their bottom line? And, in terms of, for example, if you're saving them on costs, can you charge, I don't know, half the cost of whatever you're saving as your revenue, right? But beyond that, I think a lot of people, I mean, one of the most common mistakes we see is people fall in love with their solution and don't actually want to understand what the problem is. And as an engineer, I can swear I've done that too. We're building an investment vehicle right now and on version 3 of that. But all that to say, it's just really important to ground what you're building in what people want. And one of the things we did last year was actually develop what's called our Shoreline platform that Tamara here in the chat spearheaded, which was our way of not only better democratizing access to our network and resources, but more importantly, creating a recurring revenue stream that didn't exist before, so we weren't just purely dependent on grants. So there's some creativity of how do you leverage all of the quote unquote assets you have. But on the flip side, most importantly, is making sure that what you have to offer actually aligns with what people need and want. So,
Yeah, that's a big one.
mhm. And one of the most common mistakes, even though it seems obvious on paper. So,
Yep. Yeah, the next question that we have was going to be what are some of the biggest mistakes to avoid? And I think you just answered that too. So I think,
I'm just one question ahead the whole time.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
there's more than one common mistake to avoid. I think, the other piece, and I'll actually speak from Seaworthy's experience here. We weren't funded until, or didn't start receiving funding until over 2 years in. And for most organizations that, I mean, I was in grad school for the first year and a half, so that helped. But more importantly, it gets back to understanding how do you understand kind of the landscape of not just competitors, but just similar organizations or businesses to yours, right? And what do those business models actually look like? When we started, I didn't know what a studio or incubator's business model looked like. And frankly, in the ocean space, there were only a handful when we first started back in 2020. So, it's just really important to understand what instead of the sticking with idealism and just thinking purely like I don't have competition, nothing out there like you. Unfortunately, there are not many ideas that are that purely original anymore. There's always going to be at least, maximum 1 degree of separation from ideas. So it's good to really understand grounding in reality of what at least parallel models you can not necessarily fully copy, but at least find for inspiration and understand what a successful business, at least analog, looks like.
Great. Thanks. And we do have another question, but we have to move on. So from Mitty, if you want to stay on afterwards, maybe we can have Daniel chat about what scalable solutions means in the context of Seaworthy Collective. But we're going to hold that.
I'll answer. Yeah, I'll answer in the chat. I do have to run at 12,
Perfect. There you go.
unfortunately, but
Yeah, great.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, and then last but certainly not least, we have Morgan Ray sharing her lessons learned and experience launching seaweed suites.
Thank you. And I'm so glad to go after what Daniel said, because I echo a lot of what he mentioned, and I get to share more about that here in this presentation. So let's go. So I'm Morgan Ray. I'm the founder of L'Atelier, which is a marine-based design studio. And we believe that the world can continue traveling, but do it in a much better way. I don't know if you're a traveler like me, but there's so much value to going to another culture and another place and being somewhere new. But there's also big problems with that, with waste and all of the plastic that's being used in single use and in the spaces. And through our research, we discovered that seaweed could actually be a solution, and it can touch every single part of a room, a hotel room. And so we started championing this concept of the seaweed suite, because we believe that these algae and seaweed solutions need to be visible, desirable, and accessible. And so we have started to put that in front of everybody through this suite and make them accessible to real people and hotels, because we wanted to make sure that these solutions just didn't stay in the laboratory, but they actually were put in use in hotels. So next slide, please. So we started at the beginning of a journey, and that's not in the hotel, but it's actually in the airlines. You know, most people fly to go to their hotels, and we started showing in the solutions that existed or prototypes that were out there to US airlines. And we got so close, like, to getting these seaweed solutions in flight. So the prototype that you see in the middle there, it was fantastic. We were about to get it up there, but then the price was an enormous amount. And then the straws made it to, you know, almost signing the deal with the airline. They're about to place the order, and we lost. We lost to paper by a few cents. So we started realizing that these solutions, we had like a mismatch. Like, they weren't ready for the airlines yet, but what they were ready for was our target guest. So, in the next slide, please. So, you know, we started looking into that, but before that, like many entrepreneurs, we thought that we had to chase after high net worth individuals, go after match funding. We developed a really detailed business plan, and we're pitching and presenting and competing in different events. And we put so much energy and resources into that, and we were wrong. We were completely wrong. And it took this algae accelerator program where we went into it thinking that we were going to get this funding at the end of the 6 months. And what happened was, well, I went on vacation. I went halfway around the world and realized that I had the answer already from the beginning. And we were doing a new wave of hotels, a new wave of traveling. So we didn't need to go the traditional route. So next slide, please. So back in 2022, we actually started showing these solutions to our guests. And these people that you see here, they were either a hotel owner, they were a digital nomad, or both. And we had this idea of this try before you buy, try these seaweed solutions before you buy. And the feedback was fantastic. They loved what we showed them. We gave them a little take-home kit. They still use it to this day, but they didn't have a way to buy it, and meaning it wasn't accessible to them. And they also wanted a community around it. So So what we did, we realized, we needed to speak to these people and get these solutions in their hand. So next slide, please. So what we did was, instead of going for an investor, we opened up an e-commerce site and we started selling one product, a seaweed t-shirt. And it sounds funny, but it worked. Sales started flowing in right away. There was a demand for it. No one else was selling these shirts. They were a limited edition. And then, so we're like, great, this worked. Then we expanded more products. We landed some new partnerships, having exclusive access, custom colors. We put all the work that we had been working on, from a newsletter to a design council that you could join and be a part of the decisions being made, all online. And then you could also RSVP for the actual launch. And on May 28th, we're launching the first public seaweed suite where you can come and try, and before you buy, all of these algae solutions. And if you like, you can take home anything in the room that we've shown, of course, for a price. So what started off as thinking we needed an investor, we actually really needed customers. And it began with a seaweed t-shirt, but it has now grown into a seaweed suite. So you're welcome to join us at our launch event. You can go to seaweedsuite.com to RSVP. And yeah, we hope to see you in the suite.
Great. Thank you so much, Morgan. It's so interesting every time somebody has to do a big pivot like that, whether it's funding or product design or whatever. And I think you've done a great job, taking the information you've already gathered, the research you've already done, and transferring that into something that works for you. So we do have a question around, I'm going to try and paraphrase this here. So it sounds like you were able to sort of zoom out and reassess which part of the economic system that you fit into. Do you have any advice for other folks that have innovations that maybe are feeling stuck and want to do that? How can they kind of do that similar, more meta examination of like, am I even focusing in the right, pathway? Or conversely, like things to avoid, what not to do, like how to get unstuck, I guess, if you have an idea you're trying to launch.
Yeah, I mean, we had like really complicated business plan, big ideas, huge vision. And at the end of the day, we needed exchange. We needed commerce to happen. And so finding out what was one thing that we could start with and just start doing it. And I mean, through the Algae Accelerator, we had a mentor that kind of reflected that. I mean, he was like, Morgan, open up a shop. It's like, no, we don't need to do that, but it was in the business plan the entire time. But the way he said it wasn't the way I would think to say it. So, but it was so simple. And it also took me back to when I worked at IKEA, and the founder of IKEA started that company by selling pencils door to door. So I would say to anybody that wants to start, it's like, just start with a simple thing and find your customer that will buy that one thing and then go from there. And then you can use that. Like now we have all this data, who's buying, where are they from, what price are they paying? We have wish lists to find out what they like. I can also see what people left in their cart. I mean, we have so much data. Now, if I do need investment or I do need to go to a bank, I have proof to show the demand. But it all started with a simple transaction. So simple, but sometimes we just get so caught up in their big vision,
Yeah, for sure. It's very, very relatable. And I think just start is a great piece of advice. Like, just do it.
Yeah. I think we were so held up back because it was like we were waiting for that, Prince Charming to come in, that investor, that angel to come and be like, you're worth it. Your idea is really good. And we wasted so much time on that, when if we just saw that we had a great idea and we could start doing it right away without someone else. I mean, that's the best. If you can do that on your own, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Easier said than done a lot of times.
True. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, I think that oh, we've got another question for Morgan. I was just gonna say, maybe we'll wrap this up and then we can start the bigger chat with this question from Martha for Morgan. Magenta, I don't know if you have any final words you want to share. Otherwise I can wrap up.
Yeah, just a lot of folks have shared their contact info in the chat to stay connected with each other. We also really encourage people to join Bloom Network. You know, it was designed and built by people like you, entirely, all by people who care about the places they live and really rad ideas for businesses that are going to change the world. So those are two ways to keep in touch with everybody. And yeah, one exciting thing too is that we have been getting more posts on the platform about people's initiatives with their local watershed systems and their entrepreneurial activities. So we're going to bundle all of this content. We'll package each speaker's presentation and the different blog posts we're having and different art that people are contributing into this really cool magazine for members. So that'll be one thing to, you know, help more people discover these kinds of practices. And hopefully we'll do this again in a few months and keep the rhythm going so that we can do our small part to help the connective tissue across people and companies and enthusiasts and investors and, you know, all the people who really care about this issue. I mean, it touches all of us, water, whether it's fresh water, the ocean, it's circulating through all of us and our bodies, our air, it transcends national boundaries. So, you know, I'm sure we can riff forever together on this and hopefully continue supporting each other.
Awesome. Well, yeah, just want to echo all of that. Thank you so much, everyone who joined today. We will be sending out the recording from this meeting. And like Magenta said, we're going to be posting content on our Bloom Network Oceans and Water Hub now that we have formally launched with this event. And we hope you will stick around for some more Q&A, some chats, networking. We do have a breakout room open for anyone who maybe wants to like split off into another chat. Yeah, and we hope you'll stay on for the next 30 minutes or so if you want. Yeah, and I think we can stop the recording now and keep the conversation going. Thanks, everyone.